Joining us right now is South Dakota Senator, Armed Services Committee member, Housing, Transportation, and Community Development Subcommittee member, and pilot Mike Round. Senator, it's good to see you this morning. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning.
Is it that easy that we could just make stuff here? How much more expensive would it be if we started taking over some of the production that goes on in China? How much more expensive will that be for our companies and consumers?
I think what the president is suggesting is that we've got capabilities here. We've got alternatives here. And if you go back into my part of the world in South Dakota and you talk to the producers that are there, they'd love to see a trade deal done, but they also understand where the president's at on this thing here. He's going to drive a hard bargain, but it's going to be one that's going to be better for America. And, you know, we just will find out whether or not China wants to deal with us on a fair basis or not. The president's calling the question on it.
So Cornerstone Macro strategist Nancy Lazar expects this fight to take 0.2% out of the GDP this year and 0.2 out of the Chinese GDP. But if we see the other tariffs on the remaining $350 billion of goods coming in, if we see those tariffs get implemented, she thinks it takes 0.4% out of the Chinese economy and 0.2 out of the U.S. What's your take in terms of the impact to the economy so far?
Well, in the United States, it would be better if we had a trade deal. But China is also in a position to where they get hurt if they can't deal with the United States. Look, they're stealing $250 billion worth of intellectual properties a year from us. We can't let that go on. When we talk about intellectual properties, we're talking about stuff that affects real people on a daily basis. Just to give you an example, if you're talking about new genetics for corn, if you're talking about what we use in terms of items within our defense base and so forth, they're stealing it. And what we want to make sure they understand is that they have to honor patents. They've got to be able to honor copyrights. They can't be doing this if they're going to join the rest of the world in trade agreements. The president recognizes that. For the first time now, we've got a president who is actually saying, let's call the question on this thing. Do you want to trade fairly with us or don't you?
Yeah.
We know it hurts here. I mean, look, I got producers back home right now that talk about this when I go home, and they say, look, we're feeling the response. Our soybean prices are down 20%, just as an example. We produce a lot of soybeans. But they're also saying, let's give this president a little bit more time to actually do a trade deal. China's hurting us.
Senator James Freeman at the Wall Street Journal, I wanted to ask about that in terms of how much leeway, your constituents will give this president. And also, are you and the other members of your party ready for what would be a pretty adverse market reaction if the result here is no deal at all, higher tariffs on both sides?
Well, first of all, we know that it would be better if we had a trade deal. But we also understand that it's got to be a fair trade deal. This isn't something that any of us want to see happen, but most certainly we've got to face the reality. We can look the other way, we can hide in the sand, we can walk away from pretend it's not there. But the reality is China has an economic policy that includes taking our intellectual properties, driving trade deals that truly are not fair to us, and they've got a long-term plan in place, the One Belt and Road policy that they're trying to set up, which would focus economic activity in China. The rest of the world would then be paying homage to China. Look, this plan is not something that's new. They see this as a 25 to 50-year plan. We need to be looking long-term as well. And that, for the first time now in a long, long time, we've got a president who is actually saying, let's call this exactly what it is. This is a long-term threat to the United States economy. We can't allow this to go on. And it's going to be better long-term for my producers in South Dakota if we can get fair trade deals with China. We'd love to have them, but they got to be fair.
Senator, question for you. This is Liz Peek. Is there any conversation about further relief efforts for farmers if in fact we see further damage done to farm incomes? Do you think that the Senate, the Congress is going to be concerned enough about that to put forward more monetary relief?
Short term, it may help a little bit, but what my producers really want are fair trade deals.
Yeah, of course.
Look, soybeans are down 20%. That's $2 a bushel. In South Dakota, that's $500 million moving through our economy. You have to understand, in the last 5 years, net farm economy is down 50% in the upper Midwest. These folks can't take a lot more of that, but when you talk to them, they're saying, we get it. We got a president who is really trying hard. We just hope he gets the job done.
Yeah,
Please,
we'll see about that. I mean, that's what these markets are watching as well. Senator, let me switch gears, ask you about Tehran and the tensions there. The president issued an executive order imposing sweeping sanctions on Iran's metal industries. It's the administration's latest effort to curb money used for developing weapons, coming on the anniversary of the decision to withdraw from the 2015 nuclear accord. Your reaction to this, and what is the implication of Iran's reaction and response to that?
In my opinion, the JCPOA was a bad deal to begin with. That's the reason why it was never submitted to Congress to be a treaty. People in Washington knew that it would not be approved. This president has also made it very clear that simply saying that you can have nuclear weapons at some point in the future is not the way to go. The money that Iran did get, they basically used a lot of it for terrorist activities in the region. Sanctions work. And in this particular case, what you're seeing is Iran acting out. And what they're trying to do is to protest the fact that these are actually having an impact on their economy today. What we're hoping actually happens is they recognize how serious this is, that we're not going to back away, that we're going to get our allies on board with us, and they're going to come back to the table, and we'll actually see if we can put together a plan that we keep nuclear weapons out of their hands. If they're not prepared to do that, then these sanctions need to stay in place, because they cannot get the resources to become a nuclear power, or the entire Middle East is going to simply blow up.
Yeah. All right, Senator, we'll be watching. This is an important developing story. Thank you. Senator Mike Rounds there. Coming up, what